The cupboard is getting thin. Not bare, not desperate, but noticeably thinner than it was last month. You run your hand over the sides of the storage bins, clay pots with wooden lids, a few woven baskets now half empty, and feel the familiar dread begin to curl in your stomach. It's not panic. Not yet. But hunger has a voice, and it's starting to clear its throat. You count the onions. 3. Soft, sprouting. Carrots. A handful, cracked and pale. The salted pork is mostly fat now. The bread crusts at the bottom of the sack could double as roof tiles. Even Maud the pig is looking at you funny, which is ironic, since she's part of the backup plan. This is when the whispering begins, not among your family, but inside your head. You start remembering stories. The bad winters. The hard ones. There was the winter of soot, when smoke backed up into everyone's chimneys and half the village coughed until spring. The winter of the black bread, when mold turned sour loaves into chewing gum for rats. And, of course, the one no one talks about too loudly, the winter of the hollow bellies. That was the year the frost came early and stayed late. The year the harvest failed, and the church had no grain to spare. The year even the dogs went quiet. People ate things they shouldn't. Bark. Leather. Birds they couldn't name. Some swore they saw a man boil his boots. You remember the stories told in low tones by the fire. We had soup, your grandmother once said, but only because we boiled the same bones 20 times. By the end, it was just water flavored with hope. Historians debate the true scale of medieval winter famines. Some say they were localized, others say they were widespread and cyclical. But no one argues the fear was real. Hunger wasn't a metaphor, it was a guest you never invited but who kept showing up anyway. You stir the morning gruel and pretend not to notice how thin it's gotten. More water. Less grain. Everyone else pretends too. Your uncle jokes that it's diet stew. Your cousin calls it fog pudding. The dog, however, gives you a look that says, "Try that line on me again, I dare you." By mid-afternoon, the snow has returned. Not gently. It's falling in thick, wet clumps that cling to your clothes and mute the world into silence. You head outside anyway, searching for firewood, scraping the snow off the lean-to where you've hidden the last bundle of dry branches. You carry them in like treasure. And still, the food remains. Thin. Dwindling. You glance at the small bag hanging from the beam, a few dried beans. They're the emergency supply. The "we've got no choice" beans. If you use them now, there won't be anything left if the snows continue into March. You think about the idea of stealing. Not seriously. Not quite. But your mind drifts. What if the neighbor has more? What if they've hidden some? What if? You shake your head. Those thoughts are dangerous. Not just morally, but practically. You steal, and you fracture the village. You lose the trust that binds people through winter. And once that breaks, survival becomes a solo act, and no one survives winter alone. So instead, you ration. You stretch. You get creative. Tonight, someone suggests making bread from ground-up tree bark. You laugh. Then you remember it's been done before. Birch bark. Scraped, boiled, mixed with whatever flour's left. It tastes like damp wood and disappointment, but it fills the belly. For a while. Someone else finds a few limp cabbage leaves tucked in the back of the storage bin. You cheer like they discovered gold. The pot tonight will have greens in it. That's cause for celebration. Maybe you'll sing. The little ones don't know how close you are. They still play with wooden animals near the fire, still beg for seconds. You give them what you can. Always. You eat last. Always. Outside, the wind picks up again. You hear it whistle through the trees, sliding past the hut like it's checking in to see how close you are to giving up. You glare back through the window. Not yet. The fire burns low. The stew is thinner than usual. The dog licks its bowl, then looks at yours. You slide it over. She deserves it. And as you crawl into bed, stomach complaining, bones tired, you remind yourself of one thing: spring will come. It always does. You just have to make it that far. The frost hasn't lifted for weeks. Not just the kind that paints the windows in lace or clings prettily to the edge of a roof, but the kind that sets in like it's signed a lease. The kind that bites and clings and refuses to let go. The kind people name winters after. And this one? This might be a Thames freezer. The rumors come in with the peddler, who arrives wrapped in so many layers he looks like a fabric merchant that lost a bet. He's red-faced, wide-eyed, and nearly frozen, but still manages to grin and say, "You won't believe what's happened in London." Which, to be fair, is how most of his stories start. The Thames, he says, pausing dramatically, has frozen solid. The whole hut stops moving. Someone lets go of a ladle mid-stir. A child gasps and drops their stick doll. Even Maud the pig lets out a skeptical grunt. Frozen. Solid. Thick enough to walk on. Thick enough to dance on. It's not unheard of. The Thames has frozen before. During the worst winters, the great frosts, they say you could drive a cart across it. Entire markets sprang up on the ice. Frost fairs, they called them. Historians still debate how frequent these really were, but the truth has never needed much help becoming legend. The peddler describes it with glee. Tents set up on the ice. Braziers glowing with coals. People selling roasted chestnuts, gingerbread, and hot wine. Jugglers. Dancers. Someone playing a fiddle so hard they cracked the ice near their feet. Games, races, even a printing press set up right there in the middle of the frozen river, churning out tiny broadsheets that declared the coldest winter ever. You all listen, stunned, huddled in a room barely warm enough to keep snow from forming inside. The idea of not just surviving the cold, but turning it into celebration, it stuns you. Makes you ache, even. The peddler has scraps to sell, a candle stub, a bundle of dried apples, some wool thread. But what he really sells tonight is wonder. You trade a small wooden spoon for the apple slices, and he throws in another tale, a woman who built a snow house on the Thames, painted it with soot and berry juice, and charged a penny to come inside and hear her sing. Of course, no one knows how long the ice will hold. Every frost fair is a gamble. But in those brief, icy days, people step out of survival and into spectacle. They reclaim winter not as a punishment but as a playground. You imagine it that night, lying awake under your blankets. A river turned silver and solid, filled with people laughing instead of shivering. You picture yourself skating, despite not knowing how, with a cloak flapping behind you and a hot cup of something spiced in your hands. In your dream, the Thames doesn't crack. The ice holds. The music plays. But here, in your world, there is no frost fair. Just frost. No music but the wind. No cider but thin ale. Still, the peddler's story changes the air. For a while, it lifts the ceiling of your little hut. Adds height. Adds hope. Makes you think that maybe, just maybe, there are other places where winter doesn't always win. The next day, the frost is thicker. The well is frozen again. Your breath fogs the air like you're smoking a chimney. But you smile anyway, remembering the image of a man skating with a turkey leg in one hand and a flagon of wine in the other. People in the village start talking, joking, mostly, about holding their own frost fair. Someone suggests racing on frozen pond reeds. Someone else wants to print flyers using a potato and ink. A child builds a market stall out of snow and tries to sell imaginary bread. You know it's not real. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But it's enough. Enough to laugh. Enough to feel a flicker of something that doesn't hurt. And that's the strange magic of the worst winters. They give birth to the most defiant joys. You can't beat the cold. But sometimes, you can make it dance. The birth cries pierce the cold like a knife through cloth. You sit up fast, startled from half sleep, the firelight throwing long shadows across the walls. The sound is unmistakable, a woman's strained voice, sharp and raw, followed by a high-pitched wail that cuts through the hut like a song from the other side. Someone's in labor. It's the kind of event that makes the entire household freeze, not from temperature, but from instinct. Birth is dangerous. Sacred. Unpredictable. It can turn joy into grief in a heartbeat. In winter, when everything is brittle and breath comes in clouds, it feels even more precarious. You recognize the voice, it's Elsbeth, the miller's wife. She wasn't due yet, but babies don't follow calendars. And this one has decided that a snowstorm and a hut full of half-asleep people is the perfect time to make an entrance. You and two others rush to help, ducking into the neighboring hut where the birth is happening. It's dim, smoky, and quiet, except for the labored breathing, the whispered prayers, and the murmurs of the midwife, a sharp-eyed woman with hands like leather and a voice like cracked honey. You take your place without needing to be told. You boil water. You tear cloth. You whisper calming nonsense to no one in particular. Everyone moves with practiced urgency, like a dance you've all been rehearsing your whole lives. Birth in winter is always a gamble. The mother's already tired, already malnourished. The hut is cold, no matter how high the fire's been stoked. And if the child comes too slow, if the cord wraps wrong, if blood doesn't stop, you don't let yourself think about that. The midwife speaks to Elsbeth in low, soothing tones. "You're strong," she says. "You've done this before." Which is only half true. Elsbeth lost her last child. Everyone remembers. No one says it. The birth is slow. Painful. The kind where everyone holds their breath for too long. But then, finally, the wail comes again. Stronger this time. Higher. And then, mercifully, Elsbeth's soft sob of relief. A girl. Tiny. Wrinkled. Pink as a sun-dried radish. You all exhale, shoulders dropping like you've just come in from the wind. The midwife wraps the baby in wool, presses her to Elspeth's chest, and nods. She's here. And for a moment, everything else, the cold, the hunger, the cracked hands, the waiting rats, fades. Births are rare in winter, but they happen. Because life doesn't wait. It forces its way forward, even through snow and sickness. Even when the world seems asleep. Not long after, you return to your own hut, stomach fluttering with something that's not quite joy, but close. You lie down again, your face warmed by the embers, and think about how many times this has happened over the years. How many babies were born on nights just like this? How many names were whispered for the first time while snow tapped on the shutters? And as you drift toward sleep, your mind slips to the other side of winter's coin. Because where there are births, there are also deaths. Last week, an old man died quietly in his sleep. No ceremony. Just a silence that lingered longer than usual. They wrapped him in his cloak, placed a small cross in his hand, and buried him before the ground froze too hard. He went the way many do in winter, quietly, like breath fading in the cold. Historians sometimes gloss over these rhythms, the births and deaths that come when everything is frozen and hard. But they're the heartbeat of the season. The proof that even in the stillest months, life is moving. You pull your blanket tighter, hearing the muffled snowstorm outside and the soft breathing of those around you. Somewhere nearby, a newborn sleeps. Somewhere else, someone is remembering. Winter doesn't pause for joy or sorrow. It accepts both. Folds them into its silence. And you? You carry them both. You wake to a strange feeling, not warmth exactly, but less cold. The air in the hut is still, and there's a softness to the light filtering through the shutter cracks. You sit up, stretch, and notice it right away. The silence has changed. It's not just quiet, it's thick, heavy. As if the world outside has wrapped itself in a muffled blanket. You pull open the shutter a few inches, and your breath catches. Snow. Everywhere. But not the thin, drifting kind you've grown used to. This is deep. Heavy. The world blanketed in white so thick it swallowed paths, fences, tools, even the low wall around the garden. The trees sag under the weight. The roof lines are softened. Everything looks like it's been dipped in cream. You step outside carefully, each boot sinking with a satisfying crunch. The air is so still it hums. It's the kind of snow that demands silence. You find yourself walking slower, softer, as if you're afraid to disturb the spell. And then, there it is. A drip. Then another. You glance up. From the edge of the thatch, a single drop of water falls, hits the snow below, and vanishes. You squint, and you see it, the tiniest glint of water running along the edge of the roof. Melting. The thaw has begun. Just a whisper of it. Just the first exhale from the lungs of the earth. But it's there. Back inside, someone else notices too. The ice on the bucket's thinner today, they say, tapping it with a ladle. Someone else says their fingers didn't go numb tying their boots. The goat hasn't stopped shivering all morning. Signs. Subtle. Quiet. But undeniable. The great unfreezing has started. You gather at the fire like usual, but the mood is different. Still cautious, No one trusts winter to give up easily, but there's a lift. A joke lands better. Someone sings under their breath while stirring the stew. Even the children seem lighter, their steps less stomping, more skipping. You think back to the old stories, the ones about Candlemas predicting the weather, about animals peeking from burrows and seeing shadows. About how the second half of winter could be trickier than the first. And it might. March can be a brute. April a tease. But still, this melt means something. Later, you go out again, this time with a spade. The snow is heavy, but the ground beneath feels softer. Not quite diggable yet, but getting there. You clear a path from the hut to the well, mostly just to move, to work, to celebrate motion after months of stillness. As you chip ice from the well's edge, you hear birds. Not many, but enough to make you freeze and look up. 2 sparrows in the tree above you. Fluffed up, cautious, but singing. A short song. A hopeful one. You smile. Back in the hut, the shutters are propped open slightly for the first time in weeks. Just a crack, to let the light in. The fire burns not in desperation but in rhythm. Maud the pig has repositioned herself to a cooler spot, and even the rats have gone quiet. You hear someone laugh at nothing. The water in your cup is cold, but not frozen. You run a hand along the windowsill and find not frost, but condensation. You look at the dog, curled by the fire, and whisper, "It's starting." Because this is how winter ends. Not with fanfare, but with drips. With songs. With soft snow slumping off rooftops. With a breath of air that no longer cuts. Spring isn't here yet. Not quite. But you feel it. And that is enough to keep going. The world is changing. Slowly, but without pause. You step outside and the snow has lost its bite. It's still there, blanketing the earth, lining the paths, gathered in mounds like frozen sheep, but now it's slushy at the edges, glistening in the sun that, for the first time in months, feels like more than decoration. You squint. It's higher in the sky. Warmer on your cheeks. Persistent. And then, there it is. A sprig of green. Tiny. Fragile. Laughably small against the sea of white. But it's real. A new shoot, pushing through thaw-softened ground beside the hut. You crouch beside it, brush away the remaining frost, and smile. Winter didn't kill everything. Inside, the mood has shifted. People are awake earlier. Moving more. The blankets are folded and aired out, not clutched in desperation. The fire is smaller today. Not because there's less wood, but because there's less need. The door stays open longer. The shutters too. Fresh air doesn't feel like a threat, it feels like a miracle. The children run outside, falling into muddy snowdrifts with squeals instead of whimpers. They come back soaked, noses red, eyes sparkling. Someone's already mended their shoes in anticipation of more mud, more movement. You hear laughter again. Honest laughter. The kind that comes from deep inside the ribs. The food's still humble. Gruel. Bread. Dried beans, now rehydrated into something that almost resembles a stew. But the last onion has sprouted. It's become a mascot of sorts, proof that the earth remembers how to give. You sweep the hut today. Not just out of habit, but with purpose. You even sprinkle a bit of water scented with sage on the floor, brushing away not just dirt, but memory. The long nights. The coughs. The rat that stared too long. You nod as you sweep it all out the door. And the animals, they're different too. The goat is frisky again, hopping from straw mat to doorway like she's auditioning for a spring pageant. Maud the pig has returned to her usual routine of avoiding effort, but even she has a gleam in her eye, as if remembering there's more to life than staying warm and stealing blankets. Out in the field, the ground is beginning to yield. Just barely. But you can press your heel into it without hearing it crack. The earth is waking up. And with it, so are you. Someone plants the first seed today, not for crops, but for hope. A single bean, pressed into a pot by the window where the sun can find it. No one expects it to bloom fast. But just placing it there is an act of defiance. A quiet, not yet, to the frost gods who thought they had won. Later, you gather around the fire, not for heat, but for habit. The stories are different now. Still strange, still full of wolves and witches and saints, but told with the energy of people who have survived. The tone is brighter. The ending's happier. Even the ghosts seem less aggressive tonight. The bell from the church rings at dusk, but no one rushes indoors. You stay outside a little longer, watching the sky change from blue to lavender. The stars come out gently. No longer harsh pinpricks of light in a frozen dome, but twinkling reminders that spring always returns, even when you forget what it feels like. And tonight, as you lie down on the slightly less scratchy straw mat, under blankets that smell of sun instead of smoke, you take one last deep breath. The cold is fading. The dark is retreating. The thaw has arrived. And you? You made it.